welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Tusan. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you're overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541. Or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, understanding and examining the amendments to the Disaster Risk Management Act. And in the second watch, the church and the cannabis industry, part 2. For our social media question, we ask, what are your thoughts on the new penalties for those who breach the COVID-19 public health protocols? Please share your responses on our Facebook page, Love 101 FM, and also on WhatsApp, 876-997-3125, using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program. But before all of that, here's I quote.
This morning's I quote, if everything is coming your way, you're in the wrong lane. He laughs.
Good morning, Siobhan.
Good morning, Rev. How are you?
I'm well enjoying that quote.
I know, right?
Everybody else is good, right? Has that happened to you before, Siobhan?
I'll never say never.
I didn't know that you're going in the wrong way.
You never know.
Thanks for that quote. The Morning Watch will be back after this break.
Hello, I'm Courtney Morrison, one of the hosts of the Mailbox, aired on Love 101 FM on Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Yes, Monday. And men, this is a program for you where we talk man to man on issues we as men need to address, tackle, and overcome. Love 101, the family station, really believes in the place and purpose of men. We are priests and called to lead with love and serve God as his ambassadors. A time for you to step up and represent. So men, tune in every Wednesday for the Mailbox on Love 101. I am Courtney Morrison of the Mailbox on Love 101, and we are family. Monday.
We are family.
Here is a reminder from Love 101, the family station, as we face the COVID-19 pandemic. Be kind to address stigma during this pandemic. Share the latest facts and avoid exaggerating stories. Show solidarity with affected persons and tell the stories of persons who have experienced the virus. I am Kimberly Levy from Love 101, reminding you to protect yourself while protecting others. Stay safe and keep it locked on Love 101, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Tusan. Now, the House of Representatives on Tuesday, that's March 23rd, passed legislation that will introduce a specific enforceable system of sanctions against persons who breach the public health protocols of the Disaster Risk Management Act. According to media reports, the amendments will result in individuals and institutions being subject to stiffer penalties if the act is breached. To discuss this and other related issues, we have online Dr. Knut Thompson, social commentator, head of the Caribbean Center of Educational Planning, and Mr. Anthony Williams. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you both with us.
Thank you.
Let me begin with you, Mr. Williams. In fact, before we discuss the specifics of the amendments, could could you remind us of the process involved in amending the laws of the land?
Well, the process involves the government of Jamaica, and in particular, our parliament,
Mm-hmm.
will first of all contemplate what the relevant changes are. It will pass to the parliamentarian, the chief parliamentary draftsman.
Mm-hmm.
They will do the drafting. It will then go to Parliament. It will be in the House of Representatives. They discuss it. Then the matter will then move on to the Senate for discussion. And then once that goes back again now to the House of Representatives for implementation. And once they sign off, then it is gazetted.
Are there provisions, Mr. Williams, made for input from the general public in that process?
Yes, the public is also invited in many respects to contribute towards the implementation of policies, because the public plays a very, very important role. And so the government of Jamaica would also want to know what is the thinking of the public in their contribution towards the amendment, because laws are passed not for parliamentarians. Primarily, it is passed for the general public. It is the public that is going to be affected. And so the government has to think carefully as to how is it that it will affect them. And so they will get the views. So the public refers to interest group like the church, the Jamaican Bar Association, the private sector organization of Jamaica, and again, depending on the particular legislation. If it is a legislation involving children, then interest group related to children. If it is the family interest group, etc.
And where are we on the continuum right now in regards to the process? At what stage exactly are we at now as a nation? The amendment to the Disaster Risk Management Act.
Well, the act has been amended, and so it is now left for implementation. To the best of my knowledge, right? To the best of my knowledge,
it's not gazetted as yet.
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, okay. So until then, what was there before is what carries.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Great, Dr. Thompson. What are your views, on that process that was described by Mr. Williams a while ago, and how do you think it has gone so far in regards to disaster risk management?
Yes. Well, what Mr. Williams described is the standard process, but what I think was missing in respect of the amendment to the Disaster Risk Management Act was the involvement of the public. To the best of my knowledge, and I'm willing to be corrected by counsel, there was no hearing held via a joint select committee or using the mechanism of a joint select committee to get feedback from various interest groups.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
Yes, and so that critical element of involving the public was omitted, was absent on this occasion. And I must say that I have written repeatedly about it being enshrined in our laws that any amendment, well, before the creation of any law or the amendment to any law, a joint select should not be an option. It should be a mandatory stage in the process. So once the Chief Parliamentary Council, Parliamentary Draftsperson, has established the draft bill under the instructions of Cabinet, before the matter is heard and debated in Parliament, there should be a joint select committee, and the public should be brought in. And then there should be some mechanism whereby
after the public's views have been heard, then the drafts, the Parliamentary Council would then go back and reflect in that a new draft, a second draft, the amendments that have been accepted. But it should not be left to political skill or time, or be contingent on time or any other consideration, that we decide that on this occasion or relation to this matter, we can't bother with a joint select. A joint select should be mandatory. It did not take place in this case.
Yeah,
And I think
following on that point, Dr. Thompson, if my memory serves me right, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting what was said, but in Senate at their last hearing, I'm almost sure I heard it being said that the leader of the opposition, when asked about that joint select committee, said something to the effect that it may not be necessary at this time. You remember hearing anything like that?
I heard that matter, and it's something I need to clarify with the leader of the opposition. I'm not aware of, I'm not certain of the facts, but I'll say this: if and I think there have been some dispute as to what was said.
Yeah.
And I won't get into what I understand might have been said because I'm not sure what the facts are. But I would say that it should not be left to a phone call or a chat in the hall between the leader of the opposition and the prime minister on whether we should have a joint select on a particular occasion or in relation to a particular bill. So if that were an advice that was sought by the prime minister, or an opinion that was sought by the prime minister, it is a reflection of the weakness in our system, and the absence of a commitment to true democracy, that we can have a situation where a side discussion is held and a decision is taken not to have a joint select. It is a major defect.
Mr. Williams, your take on that?
Sorry, could you just repeat that aspect for me, please?
Yeah, Dr. Thompson.
Yeah, Dr. Thompson, could you repeat that?
Enshrined in the Constitution, right, sir?
Yes, I'm saying that. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
What is the ask to be enshrined in the Constitution?
The fact that the Joint Select Committee and also the opportunity for the general public.
No, I don't think it should really be enshrined. I think it can remain as it is. Whenever you need any amendments or changes, you go to the relevant interest group. I don't think it needs to be enshrined. That's my personal view.
If I might interrupt, though, except though, my contention, though, Council, is that so even if it's not in the Constitution per se, my argument is that we should have a mechanism whereby a joint select is not optional, because if it is optional, then you could have situations where major legislation is created or amended affecting the public in adverse ways, but we didn't have a chance to participate in that process. So whether it is through constitutional amendment or otherwise, I'm saying that a joint select should be mandatory, i.e. public
I agree with you.
participation.
Yes, I agree in terms of some mechanism, being in place. But as to whether it should be enshrined is another aspect, because
okay. Hold that thought, Mr. Williams, Dr. Thompson. We're going to take a break. I'll be right back.
Jamaica Banana Board, Green Gold, Life, Health, and the Environment. The time brought to you by the Jamaica Banana Board is 7:15 on the Sound of Love.
Bills to pay and funds to transfer? No problem. I do it all on my time with JN Bank Live Online Banking. It's my simple and secure as that online banking.
Phone credit need a top up? No problem. I do it with JN Bank Live Online Banking.
It's quick and easy with just a few clicks. JN Bank Live Online Banking that goes where you go. Sign up today. Visit jnbank.com. JN Bank will help you find a way.
Hey babe, So, about that date we planned?
Remember, bro G said no movement,
Yeah, but what if we set up a video call on BIP and binge movies together on Playgo instead?
Yeah, man. Especially because bit video call no flow slow.
I know, right? Plus, we can add up to 8 people on the video call.
Even was like a virtual party. Hey, my D music playlist well hot enough. Beat Lockdown Blues with Digicel lifestyle apps and dedicated data from your Digicel Prime bundle. Download and activate in the My Digicel app today. Digicel, better together.
You are the buzz, 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 buzz. You are the zing, 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 zing. You are the. You are the click, 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 click. You are the pop, pop, pop. You are the I in Jamaica. So keep fizzing for the love of it. Pepsi.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and we are discussing the amendments made to the Disaster Risk Management Act. We have online discussing this Mr. Anthony Williams, attorney at law, and Dr. Knut Thompson, social commentator and head of the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning. Mr. Williams, before the break, you were expressing your views. Mr. Williams, still with us? All right. Dr. Thompson, are you there?
I want to make another point, if I might, sir. Are you hearing me?
Yes, Dr. Thompson.
Yes. So the question of the sacredness, I would say, of public participation in the legislative process is illustrated in one of the dangers of the exclusion of public participation are manifested in part in one of the amendments, and I want to speak to that. So under this new under the amended act, we now have a provision whereby a person who breaches an order that is made under the act, Section 26 of the original act, the 2015 act, which is retained in the current act, gives the Prime Minister the power to make orders, whether the order is to stay at home or the order is to curfew, as the case might be, and that's fine. I mean, the government must take steps to protect the public, but with those powers as outlined in Section 26, we now have in Section 52 a provision whereby the Prime Minister can also declare that certain actions or certain breaches of the order are of a criminal nature, and with his own power determine what the sanctions should be. Under the original act, a person is brought before the resident magistrate, who then may impose a fine or imprisonment as the RM might deem fit. Under the current act, it's the Prime Minister who has the power to declare what a criminal offense is. And that is a dangerous direction in which we have gone, because it is not inconceivable that a Prime Minister, not necessarily this Prime Minister, though it could be this Prime Minister, a future Prime Minister could decide that during a disaster, there should be no criticism of the government, because such criticism might distract the government from focusing on addressing the disaster. And therefore,
Dr. Thompson?
Yes. Pardon me?
Are you hearing me? I'm asking, is that not a far-fetched thought?
No, it's not. It's not. I tell you why. Because remember, essentially, the act gives the Prime Minister the power to declare that something is a criminal offense. I'm saying that it essentially, anything the Prime Minister may determine, and I'm saying a Prime Minister, not necessarily this Prime Minister, could decide in 5 years' time, in 20 years' time, that certain exercise certain acts which exercise our freedom. For example, public commentary that is adverse to the government is prohibited during a disaster.
Yes.
And
Mr. Williams, is that your understanding?
Yes. Well, I agree entirely. In fact, the Disaster Risk Management Act was not designed to deal with this type of pandemic situation. In fact, if we look at the other legislation, the Public Health Act and the Quarantine Act, these acts were not designed to deal with pandemics of this nature. It was really designed to deal with pandemics associated with ships and the sea and sea-like situations. It was designed to monitor and control pandemics relating to, the sea captains and passengers. And so what we're seeing now is a dramatic, revolutionized way of dealing with the situation because of the social disorders in the country. And and I agree with my friend and colleague, Mr. Thompson, that what is kind of a situation, because what it means is that the government will just be implementing policies or possibly, overnight to fit the situation. And they can determine, how the criminal laws are going to be imposed, the fines, the sanctions, and it can impact society. At the same time, the government has the right to determine laws, but in determining it, right, there must be proper mechanisms in place. So if we look at the various fines, there are several fines. I don't know if you want to go through them at some point. So let us look at them. So the list of fines is, for not wearing your mask in a public place is $5,000. Not social distancing, $5,000. Not complying with the curfew, $10,000. You're not staying at home if you have flu-like symptoms, $10,000. Gathering in groups of more than 10, $20,000. Now, this includes the church. This includes at the workplace. Not quarantine when you return to Jamaica. If you're a Jamaican resident, is $25,000. If you are a non-Jamaican, fail to quarantine, $30,000. Requiring employee with flu-like symptoms to come to work. So any employer rather, who enforces or directs an employee or the employees to come to work when they have flu-like symptoms and they know that they have the flu-like symptoms or suspect, then you're going to pay a fine of $30,000. For breaking the quarantine after testing positive, it's $50,000. We saw the incident with the JetBlue stewardess who was tested positive, broke the quarantine, but she escaped. $50,000. Conducting funeral, workshop, burial, or wedding in contravention is $100,000. And then it is stepping up now to $250,000 for anyone who operates a beach, zoo, or a park outside of the specified times. And in the hotel industry, failure to operate a hotel or resort in accordance with the COVID protocols, you'll pay $500,000. So these are the new fines. And as I said, the act was not really designed to deal with this type of situations, right? And so the government, in its wisdom from their perspective, have implemented these series of fines in order to have social behavior being controlled and the legislation being modified to ensure that strict pandemic protocols are observed.
Dr. Thompson, apart from the powers, additional powers given to the Prime Minister, what other concerns do you have with the amendment so far?
Right. So let me be clear. I don't have a problem in and of itself with fines being stated in the Act. I mean, and what these fines are on the face of it.
Okay with the fine?
I'm generally okay. I'll say broadly that I think that so I'm okay with the principle of fines. What I have a problem with these specific fines in the context of this legislation, and more broadly in the context of legislations to do with social control, is that the weight of the intervention appears to be on penalties or punishment rather than on the promotion of education and voluntary compliance. So I think that there's a shift. What the act represents, or this amendment, is a shift to more draconian, strong, punitive measures as a means of dealing with the situation. And let's agree that Jamaica is Jamaicans generally, we Jamaicans are not very cooperative. So there has to be a balance struck between moral suasion and penalties. But I think that the government's leaning there. But I want to go back to a point though, and the question of the powers that have been granted to the Prime Minister under the Act. And Council spoke to this. It's a question of the extent to which the framing of this amendment is bypassing the role of Parliament to make certain pronouncements and make certain decisions about what should be enshrined in the law. Bear in mind that the Prime Minister took the view that there are certain that the Prime Minister should have a certain latitude in not having to go through the contours of Parliament to get certain legislation passed and implement certain strong measures to deal with problems facing the country. And I think what he has successfully done through this amendment is to bypass Parliament. And I think that development is what is critical, because what is dangerous, because you have to ask yourself, what other piece of legislation, what other piece of action rather, may be contemplated under this legislation which bypasses Parliament and render our three-branch government arrangement, which with relative independence and co-equality, what other measures could weaken the structures of Parliament? And that's my concern.
But on the other hand, we have to look at the fluidity of the COVID situation. And when I say fluidity, we're looking at the numbers. The numbers are escalating. They are spiking. They are just moving exponentially.
Alarming.
So yeah, it is alarming, and so it requires the Prime Minister to take action on a basically a week by week basis, if we may say so, because the pandemic is not static. The situation is being very fluid, very, very fluid. And so in this regard, sorry?
William, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
There are those who would argue that it's a knee-jerk response. How do you respond?
Well, knee-jerk, yes, but at the same time, it has to be done in order to address the situation. Now, when you look at the numbers, the numbers are just moving rapidly. We for a small nation, and we are seeing 500, 600, 700, 800 in one day. So steps have to be taken in order to cauterize the pandemic. Now, one of the most important assets of a country is its human capital. And if your human capital is not protected and taken care of, your country is going to be in disaster. So the Prime Minister has to take
a quick one. Except that the Prime Minister has taken the view since 2017 that the Prime Minister should have a mechanism to undertake certain tough measures bypassing Parliament. So he had this view long before the pandemic. And so I think the pandemic provided an opportunity to do something that he enunciated from 2017 that he wanted to do. And the evidence is there, the facts are there.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for being with us this morning. We have to leave it there. Stay safe, and thanks for joining us again.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thanks again. I appreciate it.
Great. Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
JN Bank Live Online Banking is your quick and easy banking that's safe and secure. Sign up today. Visit jnbank.com. JN Bank will help you find a way. The time is
7:31, folks, on the family station Love 101. This is the family station. Do stick and stay with us. Take a break, yes? Take care of some business, then come back with much more. So come.
If you're a farmer or a fisher folk, this one's for you. Sagicor AgriCare Plan. With AgriCare Plan, you can get affordable insurance coverage for you and your family. Life insurance, critical illness coverage, and health insurance for as little as $3,900 every 3 months. Visit your nearest RADA or fisheries office or text AgriCare to 876-322-2384 to apply. Farmers and fisher folk, get the insurance coverage your family deserves today with Sagicor AgriCare Plan.
Nation, baby.
Rain or shine, any weather. When we go bold, we go virgin. Quality paint, no faded colors. When we go bold, we go virgin. Let your imagination run free. Pick a color, any color for the space for your need. When we say it bold, that mean it not be. Quality in every color, 7-year guarantee. When we go bold, we go virgin. Watch your color. When we go bold, we go virgin. Rain or shine, any color you need. When we go bold, we go virgin.
There are a million reasons to want to own a home.
I want more space for the children.
I am tired of paying rent.
My wife and I want an investment.
Go from future plans to keys in hand with an NCB mortgage. Get rates as low as 6.95%, 100% financing, and up to 40 years to repay. Plus, get the life insurance and home insurance you need all in one place. Visit myhome.jncb.com to get started. Conditions apply.
OnlyFlow gives you everything you want in every plan. Unlimited local calls and texts, plus unlimited data for the apps you really want like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and WhatsApp. No other network comes close. Flow has plans from 2 to 30 days, and every plan has everything you want. Dial *129 *6 $ to activate your 7-day plan with everything you want for only $675. Conditions apply.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's have a look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. In the Gleaner, coalition presses for closure of NIDS exemption loophole. And then boards under microscope of sex harassment law. We see here as well that arrest looms in the whipping probe. Caregiver to turn herself in on Friday. In the Observer, Manchester police honor 16 retired cops. Corporal punishment still preferred in households. And then Snapper Drive fisherman among 18 charged for curfew breaches. Those are some of the major stories in the newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. What are your thoughts on the new penalties for those who breach the COVID-19 public health protocol? Leave a comment on our Facebook page, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. We'll be right back.
Here is a reminder from Love 101, the family station, as we face the COVID-19 pandemic. Masks are effective only when used in combination with frequent hand cleaning with soap and water or alcohol-based solutions. Wear a mask that is lined with 2 or more layers. When taking it off, ensure you dispose of it properly. I'm Nigel Wilkinson from Love 101, reminding you to protect yourself while protecting others. Stay safe and keep it locked on Love 101, the family station. If you want to understand God's promises and plans for you, then you need to start in the pages of the Bible. Moving you forward in your relationship with Jesus Christ, that's what Back to the Bible is all about. Discover truth, wisdom, and direction for your life. Listen to Back to the Bible. every weekday afternoon at 12:30 right here on Love 101 FM, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and we're now going into the second watch. Now, what really is the cannabis industry in Jamaica? How important is it to Jamaican lives and livelihood? What does the church have to do, anyway, with this industry, or vice versa? Now, we started this discussion 2 weeks ago, and we have decided to have a part 2 discussion on the matter in order to explore some other related issues. And we have joining us again the Reverend Franklin Small, pastor of the Hanover Street Circuit of Baptist Churches, and Mr. Paul Burke, CEO of Jamaica Ganja Growers and Producers Association. Good morning again, gentlemen.
Good morning, Jamaica. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you and to the listeners.
Reverend Small, are you on?
Yes, I am on.
Reverend Small? Okay, not with us as yet.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
good.
Good morning to you and to your listeners.
Yes, welcome. You sound far away though, Rev.
No, I'm very, very close.
Okay. All right, Mr. Burke. Could you, just remind us of the major changes in the law years ago in regards to the production and use of cannabis in Jamaica? Why were those changes made? Just to refresh our memories.
That's directed at me?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Burke.
So, as you know, for 102 years, cannabis was illegal in Jamaica. And there's a whole historical reason which I won't go into. But after a lot of resistance by the Rastafarians, who rejected it, that it was dangerous, and also accepted that they needed for sacramental purposes, and a lobby reform group, in 2015, the law was changed. So we had what became the Amendment to the Dangerous Drugs Act 2015. And there are 5 main things that this law allowed. One, it decriminalized ganja, that any Jamaican could have up to 2 ounces of ganja, which would now be a ticketable offense and not a criminal offense. Mm-hmm. Previously, caught with any amount of ganja was a criminal offense, and you could be both fined and confined. So the first thing it did was to decriminalize ganja up to 2 ounces. The second thing it did was to allow the automatic expungement of all criminal records for minor possession of ganja, not for trafficking, for minor possession. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, many people had a criminal record, could not go abroad, could not get visas, could not work at the airport, could not work in the security guard industry because they had a criminal record. So it automatically, on application, expunged all of those records. The third thing, it became the first legislation to recognize that Rastafari exists, and it gave them sacramental right to both cultivate and use ganja for non-commercial reasons. The fourth thing, it allowed every household in Jamaica, adult household, to plant up to 5 ganja plants for their own therapeutic purposes, which would mean they could not sell it, but it was for personal use. And finally, it ushered in a medicinal cannabis industry, which is regulated by the Cannabis Licensing Authority. And it gave out 5 licenses. 1, a license for cultivation under strict regulation, a license for retail, a license for research and development, a license for processing, that is to extract oils from the cannabis plant, and finally a transportation license to allow for people to move ganja from one place to another, one place to another. And that in a nutshell is what the law did.
All right, thanks. The Rastafarian movement there gave them constitutional rights. Is that what you said?
And then it was called constitutional right. It gave them, the legislation gave them a legal right to cultivate ganja. They have to apply for it through a permit from the Ministry of Justice. It's not automatic.
Yes.
And receive that permit to cultivate ganja, to use ganja for sacramental purposes. That means to at designated places of worship, of praises, of gathering, to allow Rastafari to use that ganja for sacramental purposes. But they were not allowed to trade it commercially.
So if what if an individual is not a Rastafari and wanted to use it for sacramental purposes? Would that be allowed?
Well, that's another thing, because there are groups who are not Rastafari,
right.
who also use it, but it's identified. They will be able to apply, I am assuming, to the Ministry of Justice, give their reason, and then the ministry would investigate and approve. But remember, you are allowed to have 2 ounces, but more than 2 ounces, because if you cultivate your own ganja, you're allowed to have it in your house and you're allowed to use it in your house, right? And it is not a criminal offense.
Okay. Reverend Small, just to refresh our memories before we move forward in our discussion, what are your views on those changes that were made in the law years ago?
Yes, I agree with the changes that were mentioned. As a person I had mentioned before that in such a space I was, and I agree with the changes that that were done. Yes, to criminalize somebody for a little spliff, so to speak, and all that sort of stuff. And then it goes against your criminal records. I believe that was too draconian, if I may use such a word. But I agree with the laws that are put in place.
Did you have concerns about the usage of the weed?
Yes.
Generally speaking.
I have concern about the use. And because of we know the impact that it can have on persons and so. And I had also mentioned that the last time that one of the deficiencies that I've seen is we are not exposed, so to speak, in the psychoeducational aspect of cannabis. While other things are, you can see it on television, you can hear it on the radio, whether cigarette is dangerous for your health and so. When it comes to cannabis, we have not seen that. And that's where I kind of have a problem with that aspect, that we need to do that some more.
Okay. All right. Mr. Burke, last time, if I remember, you were responding to that concern that Reverend Small had, and then we had to leave the program. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Certainly. So, like all substances, they can be abused, misused, wrongly used. There's good, bad, and ugly. Certainly, the ugly side has been carried by the state for many years, stigmatizing ganja without the necessary scientific evidence. That ganja can make you mad, ganja bad for you, right? The good, the scientific evidence vastly outweighs the bad and ugly of cannabis. Vastly outweighs its medicinal properties more every day. Doctors, scientists, researchers are learning about the beneficial use of cannabis. I have my own experience. I don't smoke, but I consume. And I can say that since consuming, I blend it in my drinks, in my juices, I have felt certainly my brain power, my memory has improved. And this is not mind over matter. I feel healthier. I feel better, right? And I can feel the difference of consuming cannabis.
Well, hold that thought, please, Mr. Burke, Reverend Small. We're going to take a break and be right back.
The time by the Ministry of Health, healthy people, healthy environment is
7:45 on the Sound of Love.
Entrepreneurs, now you've got more support in your corner. Introducing Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center, where entrepreneurs benefit from free training in business management, financial support and guidance from pros, as well as research capabilities. Sagicor Bank, in partnership with the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, brings you this first center of its kind for small entrepreneurs to develop and grow. Let's help you take your business to the next level of success. Contact Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center today. WhatsApp 876-997-3745.
Jamaica. Our way of life is being affected, but our path to progress is not. Flow has continued to build its network infrastructure to prepare for times like these, to ensure that your connections to everything important are strong and reliable. And if you are a current Flow Home Service customer, upgraded services may be available in your area. Learning from home is smarter, and working from home is stronger than ever. I am Stephen Price, Country Manager of Flow, and this is our commitment. The strength of the Flow network is yours and ready when you need it. Visit your nearest Flow store or discoverflow.co. It is our privilege to serve you.
You are the buzz, 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 buzz. You are the zing, 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 zing. You are the you are the click, 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 click. You are the pop, pop, pop. You are the I in Jamaica. So keep fizzing for the love of it. Pepsi.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint, and we are discussing the church and the cannabis industry. And we have online Mr. Paul Burke and Reverend Franklin Small. Now, Reverend Small, one of the questions I'd hoped to ask you the last time we were on has to do with the church entering into the market. And would you, as a clergyman, advise churches to enter this cannabis market as a legitimate income generator, sir?
Good question. For us to enter into the market, we have to go by the licensing authorities. That's number one. And as what Mr. Burke had mentioned, the different licenses that are given. One as a cultivator. The cultivator is for medical and scientific and therapeutical purposes. The processor, a license for processor, you manufacture the cannabis with cannabis-based products. You have a transportation aspect of it, the transporter, that you can apply for the license to transport the products between two licensed premises, so to speak. Then you have the retailer, one who sell whether the medical and scientific or the therapeutic and so on. And then you have the research and development component to that. And that is given to tertiary institution in particular. So there are a few that we have to rule out as church. Then I'm sorry, the research aspect of it, because we are not tertiary. The problem I have is that if a church is in that, what's the objective? The objective possibly would be to make money.
Yeah.
Money. That's just the bottom line in my mind.
Yes.
Would be for the church, just to make money.
Right.
But because if we are going to be involved in it for medical, scientific, and therapeutic purposes, the problem I have is the use of the therapeutic purposes. I don't know what that can entail, because somebody can say the smoking is therapeutic for me, and I have a problem with that also. That it depends on, the therapeutic area is so wide. If it had said for medical and scientific purpose, you're the cultivator, fine. But to have all of these other little things, tentacles to it, I have a problem with it if the church is involved in it. Somebody else, maybe an individual.
Are you saying no then, Rev?
Yes, that's where I'm going. I don't
Yes, you're going. You would not advise churches to enter this market.
No, I would not advise churches, no churches. If an individual chooses, fine, he or she can. But when it comes to church, I would not advise church to do
Mr. Burke, your response to
I
that.
have listened carefully to Reverend Small, and my question would a church own a pharmacy in order to give discounted prices to its members and other Jamaicans? And I would see nothing wrong with a church owning a pharmacy. To do two things. One, to make prices available to Jamaicans at a discounted cost. But two, to support some of its social programs. I'm assuming it would have social programs carrying out. And therefore, the money is not just seen as profit, but as to sustain important social programs. If you can own a pharmacy, you can own a cannabis retail outlet, in my view, because people get a recommendation or a prescription from a doctor, a registered medical practitioner, right? And the science is involving. Some people it makes them sleep better at night. Some people it reduces anxiety. There is overwhelming evidence about the fight against cancer, right? There is the World Health Organization has had to reclassify CBD that it has medicinal properties after years of refusing to do so. The evidence is becoming overwhelming. But just like DPH, which is a normal cough syrup, if you drink a whole bottle, it can be harmful, although you buy it over the counter. So microdosing has been introduced into the cannabis industry for some time, where you start at small doses till you find out what is your threshold, how you react to it, how you respond to it. Observational studies are being done. People know what they can take, what they can't take. One of the problems is that the plant is different in different strains are different, so you get different levels of THC and CBD. But the science is working on that, how you have certain thresholds, what is good for what has been proven good for what. So it's an evolving science. But the medicinal benefit, for example, we allow alcohol to be sold left, right, and center. And one of the things that is
not the
clear
church,
to many, no, not the church. One thing that is clear to many persons is that whatever potential harm cannabis can do, just like aspirin, just like I heard this study saying 300 people out of 18 million vaccinated in Britain have developed blood clots.
Right.
300 out of 18 million. They say that the good is far more than the harm.
Okay.
Right?
All right. Reverend Small.
I speak of cannabis.
Reverend
Yes,
Small.
I want to respond to. I want to respond to Mr.
Yes,
Thank you very much. I'm not saying that a pharmacy cannot sell. No, I said medical and scientific, which where pharmacies would come in. The problem I have is with what is involved in the therapeutic area of it. And that can have quite a lot of tentacles. For example, if my pharmacy is going to sell a gram of marijuana in a bag because this person wants it for scientific, for therapeutic purpose. That's where I'm talking about. That's the problem where I have with that. I'm not saying that a pharmacy cannot, because there is Canasol, Asmasol, and all that sort of stuff sold in pharmacy. But my problem is, are we going to be involved to sell little packages of the herb? If you understand what I'm driving at, and so as a retailer, and so I'm not saying that you're ruling out all of the aspect, because I emphasize the medical and scientific. The other area that I have problem with is what we consider as a therapeutic area. That's just my take on it. And with that in mind, it is hard for me. Retailers, pharmacy, yes, but the law, so to speak, based upon the licensing authority, it's really difficult in my mind.
Couldn't it be argued then, Mr. Burt, that the stance taken by Reverend Small is out of an abundance of caution?
I want to agree we need more public education, but people have been using it for therapeutic purposes. So your grandmother both has rubbed on. People used to plant them ganja tree in the yard. People know it had healing purposes, right? Part of why it was stigmatized is because people concluded because Rastafari said that His Imperial Majesty was God, that they want to go back to Africa, then burn the Pope and then burn the Queen. That people thought they were mad people. And they saw the Pope as representing Babylon. They saw the Queen as representing an evil British colonial empire. They knew that God was black. Their God was black. Right? They recognized Imperial Majesty as a dignified black leader to look upon. Right? They rejected many of our lifestyles of the colonial lifestyle. And people say, boys, ganja make them mad. So many of what they have said, they maybe did not communicate it properly. People have realized that there's more than a grain of truth in it. What the Queen of England represents, what the church has represented in the past, supporting slavery and all kind of inequitable things. Right?
I'm wondering though, sorry, Mr. Burke, I'm wondering, do you know of any church that has entered into this market, locally or international?
The Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church is doing their research, and it's an incorporated church in Jamaica. Right? They're doing their research into it, and I know they have a deep interest in it.
And the commercial activity?
The commercial activity.
Oh, okay.
Right? The commercial activity.
Okay.
Right? I can't tell you about United States of America. Right? I really don't know. Right? But I know a lot of people who are very spiritual use ganja.
Reverend Small, you know of any church?
No. Well, I don't know of any church involved in the cultivation or apply for any of the license. So for that, I have no idea about that. But in a sense, I agree with Mr. Burke. You see, my thing is I'm just uncomfortable with one, as I mentioned about the psychoeducation and this therapeutic thing about it. I agree that, your grandmother rubbed her knee with it and so forth. The thing is this: how do I control somebody who come and buy an ounce and say it is for to anoint my grandmother's knee, but when you take it out, it is to build a nice spliff, because, so these are the questions that I have, with how do I...
But they say the spliff don't necessarily cause harm to everybody.
Yeah, that's my point, but I don't know who.
Can I tell you a story, Reverend Small? When I was young, I just left school. I was at JC Old Boys function, a cocktail party one night, and somebody gave me a glass to drink, and it was whiskey. I said, try it. And I drank that glass of whiskey, the first and last glass I've ever drunk of whiskey. And it went straight to my head. It went straight to my head. Right? That doesn't mean that whiskey cannot be had in small portions.
That's not a good example in a church discussion. We have to leave it there, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Yeah, man. Stay safe.
Thank you too. Bless you.
Yeah, man. Thank you, listeners, for being with us.
I'll have talks with Reverend Small privately.
All right, Mr. Ray. Looking forward.
Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for a discussion of topical and controversial issues. For information how to get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-959627. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Miss Kathy Gale, and our guests. I am Dylan Toussaint, and you're back to Love in the Morning with Chevron Blair.
Thank you, listeners. It's now 8 o'clock on the family station, Love 101, and it's time for the program 40.